Imagine dedicating your entire life to a man who slowly erases you, piece by piece. Imagine being told your worth comes only through silence, obedience, and sacrifice. And then imagine finding the courage after decades of shame and fear to finally speak the truth. This is not just reality television drama. This is the chilling unraveling of Mary's story, a story of control, betrayal, and survival that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. All right, beasties, sit down, buckle up, and listen closely, because what I am about to share will leave you stunned and questioning everything you thought you knew about sister wives and the story of Mary Brown. Because this is not just about a woman who was once married to Cody Brown. This is not just about a reality television show that glamorized a lifestyle that was presented as loving, happy, and full of choice. No. This is about secrets. It is about manipulation. It is about survival inside a system that was presented to the public as freedom. But behind the scenes, it was chains upon chains upon chains. And Mary has finally started peeling back the curtain and revealing pieces of what she endured. And the first detail that stops us in our tracks is that she admits she was in what can only be described as a cult. And when you hear her words, when you let them sink into your heart, you realize that the entire time we were watching this family present themselves as normal, progressive, different, but still relatable. They were in fact trapped in a structure that demanded obedience, demanded silence, and demanded that women accept less than they deserved in exchange for promises of eternity. And it is heartbreaking, because Mary explained that she believed she had to marry Cody in order to gain entrance to the celestial kingdom. She believed that her path to heaven was tied to him, and that belief was not optional. It was ingrained from childhood every single day of her life until it was her reality. So, when you consider that foundation, when you consider the way faith and fear were braided together, it makes sense that when the cameras arrived, when the show began filming Mary and the other wives played their parts. Because to resist would be to risk not only their families, but their eternal salvation. And yet in this new interview, Mary admits that even before the show began, even before the glossy episodes introduced the world to the Browns, she was questioning her faith. She was questioning her role. She was asking herself quietly, secretly, if this was really the path she wanted, and if she truly believed what she had been taught. Now pause for a moment and think about the courage that requires, because inside this system, questioning is not permitted. Questioning means you are wrong. Questioning means you are the problem. And Mary says it herself. She felt wrong for everything. She was wrong for how she handled her marriage, wrong for her body not producing more children, wrong for her jealousy when new wives entered the family, wrong for struggling to smile through pain, and eventually wrong even for questioning her religion. So imagine carrying that weight every single day, feeling like every breath, every action, every thought was being judged and found lacking. And when you live like that long enough, it shapes you. It bends you into someone who hides, who suppresses, who cannot speak their truth. Because to speak it is to invite punishment. And so Mary kept quiet. She did not tell Cody. She did not tell her sister wives. She did not tell anyone. Instead, she processed it silently, battling herself inside, because she knew that no matter what she felt, the answer from those around her would be that she was wrong. And the brilliance of the system is that it convinces you that the suffering is your fault, and that if you just obey, if you just humble yourself, if you just sacrifice a little more, maybe then you will find peace. But Mary never found it. And the cracks were already forming long before Vegas, long before Robin, long before the world tuned in to watch. And that is where the shock lies. Because while we sat at home judging, wondering why she stayed, wondering why she accepted so little, wondering why she let herself be diminished, the truth is she was fighting a battle none of us could see, and the indoctrination was so deep that she could not reach out without fear of betrayal, because in that world, even your own sister wife could become the messenger that carried your doubts back to Cody, and then you would face manipulation, gaslighting, punishment, subtle but devastating punishment. And so Mary lived with secrets. She lived on eggshells. She lived in silence. And that silence was eating her alive, and when you think about that, you realize that the show was never real. The smiles were not real. The unity was not real. The choice was not real. It was theater, a performance for us. While behind the curtain, pain was rotting everything from the inside out, and that is why this interview is so explosive, because Mary finally names it. She names the cult. She names the conditioning. She names the quiet suffering. And when someone names the truth after years of silence, it cannot be unseen, and it changes how we view everything that came before. Now, besties, as we continue deeper into this story, the revelations only grow more unsettling because Mary did not just talk about faith. She spoke about dating after leaving Cody, and this detail might sound ordinary at first, but wait until you hear what actually happened, because one moment perfectly captures the lasting impact of her past and how it follows her into every corner of her present. She shared a story about talking to a man on a dating app. Nothing serious, just casual conversation, early steps, the way people get to know one another before deciding whether to meet in person. And she had not shared anything personal yet. No deep confessions, no long history, no painful revelations, just two people chatting. Then the show was advertised for its new season, and suddenly the truth could not stay hidden, because her face was there on the screen. Her name tied forever to the past. She was trying to move beyond, and the man messaged her directly. He said he was all about honesty and wanted to be upfront. He had seen the advertisement, and he recognized her, and in the next breath he told her he was not interested. And Mary says he was kind, respectful, not cruel. But the rejection cut deep because it was not about who she was in that moment. It was about who she had been and the world she had come from. And that reality slammed into her again like a weight, reminding her that no matter how far she runs, the shadow of the cult, the shadow of polygamy, the shadow of Cody will always trail behind her. And that is heartbreaking because think about it. This is a woman who has already sacrificed decades of her life. This is someone who believed she had to marry in order to reach heaven, who endured jealousy, heartbreak, shame, and manipulation for years. And now, even when she takes steps toward building something new, toward love, toward connection, the past reaches out and slams the door in her face. And she has to live with the reality that many men will never see her for who she is. They will only see the cult. They will only see the show. They will only see the stigma. And that is not fair. But it is real. And Mary knows it. And she admits it openly, and that admission lands like thunder. Because it reminds us that walking away from a system like this does not mean the chains simply fall off. It means the chains remain visible to everyone else, even if you have unlocked them for yourself. And those chains can scare people. They can repel people. They can isolate you further. And that is the tragedy Mary faces today. She is free, and yet she is still judged. She is independent, and yet she is still shadowed, and she is trying to rebuild, while others reduce her to the worst chapters of her life. Now pause again and realize what this means, because so often when people leave these kinds of environments, we cheer, we clap, we say, "You made it. You are free." But the truth is, freedom is only the first step. Freedom is only the beginning, because once you step outside, you carry the weight of stigma. You carry the doubts of others. You carry the fear that you will never be truly understood. And Mary feels this every single time she attempts to connect. And she told Amy Robach and TJ Holmes that this has been one of her hardest struggles because men often want nothing to do with her background. They hear cult, and they step back. They hear polygamy, and they vanish. They hear sister wives, and they decide it is too much baggage, and that reality isolates her further, making her wonder if she will ever find someone who can see past the headlines, past the faith, past the show, and into her real heart. And it is haunting, because if you think about it carefully, you realize she is punished both ways. She was punished for staying, and she is punished for leaving. She was punished for silence, and she is punished for speaking. She was punished inside the cult, and she is punished outside the cult. And what does that leave her? It leaves her trapped in a limbo where she has to fight every day just to be seen for who she truly is. And that is why this interview matters so much, because by speaking openly, she is reclaiming her story. She is refusing to let the world define her by the past. And yet the suspense lingers, because the question remains: will the world listen? Will anyone truly understand? Will someone finally see Mary Brown, not as Cody's first wife, not as a character on a reality show, not as a former member of a polygamous faith, but as a woman who fought silently for years and who now deserves peace, love, and respect? And that uncertainty, that unresolved question, is what keeps us glued to every word. because the answer is not guaranteed and Mary is still waiting to find out. Besties lean in closer because this is where the layers of the story start pulling back, to reveal truths that shake the foundation of everything we thought we knew about the family, about the show, and about the world Mary was living in. She admitted that long before the cameras captured the staged smiles, long before the audience was invited to believe that this family was happy and thriving, she was already questioning, she was already unraveling inside, and yet she stayed silent because she knew the cost of honesty inside that structure was unbearable. She explained that anytime she expressed doubt, anytime she revealed pain, anytime she admitted to jealousy or struggle, the answer from the group was the same. She was wrong. It was her fault. She was the problem, and that message played on repeat until she internalized it and believed it. And the brilliance of such a system is that it convinces you the suffering is your own creation. It convinces you that if you just do better, if you just obey harder, if you just erase yourself completely, maybe then you will finally be acceptable. And so Mary lived under a constant storm of guilt, shame, and silence. And what makes this even more devastating is that while the world was being told this was a lifestyle of choice, that the women were happy, that it was not a cult, Mary knew in her heart she was living the opposite. And still she played the role because breaking the script would mean not just disappointing a husband or upsetting a family, but risking eternal damnation according to what she had been taught. And so the cameras rolled and the audience saw what they were meant to see. A family that insisted, "We are not like the stories you hear about. We are not like Warren Jeffs, we are different. We are modern. We are free. We are about love." But behind the curtain, the truth was that Mary was already doubting, and she was not alone. Christine, too, would later admit that she did not believe half the things she said on camera, and that they were selling an image, not living a reality. And when you realize that, you start to understand the visceral reactions from viewers, the anger, the judgment, the disbelief, because we were watching women lie to themselves and to us, and it frustrated us. We wanted to scream, "Cannot you see that he is breaking you down? Cannot you see that you deserve more? Cannot you see that this is not love?" And yet, in truth, they could not see it, or at least they could not say it, because the indoctrination was stronger than their voices. And Mary described how whenever she tried to push forward to find independence, she was shut down. Gaslit, manipulated, Robin would tell her not to go to college, because that meant abandoning. Her Cody would play hot and cold games, dangling affection, then withdrawing it. Her faith community would whisper that her jealousy was proof of her weakness, and over, the message was hammered into her that she was wrong, and this kind of repetition shapes the mind. It erodes the spirit until even the strongest heart starts to believe. Maybe it is true. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe if I just stop resisting. Maybe if I just obey. Then the pain will go away. But the pain never did. And that is why when Mary speaks now, it matters so much, because she is revealing what happens when silence is forced, when truth is denied, when lives are lived for the sake of image rather than reality. And it raises the question how many other women inside similar structures are still smiling for the world while crying in secret. How many are still trapped by guilt, shame, and fear? Because the parallels are endless, and Mary's honesty cracks open the facade, showing us that what looks like devotion can sometimes be despair. What looks like choice can sometimes be coercion, and what looks like faith can sometimes be control. And this is where the suspense deepens, because as Mary speaks her truth, you start to wonder how different her life might have been if she had not been silenced from the beginning, if she had been encouraged to pursue her dreams, if she had been free to marry or not marry, if she had been valued for who she was, rather than judged for what she could not provide. And that thought is haunting, because it forces us to see that the show did not just document a family. It documented the erasure of individuality. It documented the cost of obedience. It documented the slow breaking of a woman who was told over and over again that she was less. And yet, even as Mary reveals the pain, she does not lash out. She does not hurl blame. She simply states the truth. She does not hate Cody. She does not wish to destroy him. She just wishes things had been different. She just wants to move on, and in that quiet strength lies the power of her story, because even after everything, she still chooses to rise. She still chooses to seek healing. She still chooses to hope that someday she will be seen for who she is and not for the cage she was once trapped inside. And that is what keeps us hanging on every word, because the suspense is not just in what she reveals, but in what lies ahead. Will she find peace? Will she find love? Will she ever escape the shadow of the show and the cult that shaped her? Or will those chains continue to drag behind her no matter how far she runs? And that uncertainty is the hook that keeps us here waiting, desperate to know what comes next. The deeper Mary went into her truth, the clearer it became that the cracks in her world had always been there long before Robin entered. Long before the cameras arrived, long before the fans started dissecting every glance and gesture, the seeds of her pain were planted. In a belief system that told her from the time she was young that her worth was tied to sacrifice, that her body was not her own, that her heart belonged to a man who could never fully belong to her in return, because he would always divide himself among others. And the chilling part of her revelation is that she was taught to accept this not as a tragedy, but as a blessing. She was told that jealousy was evil, that wanting more was selfish, that dreaming of something different meant she was weak and unworthy. And so she buried her longing. She convinced herself this was the path she chose, even as every fiber of her being screamed for freedom. And when Robin arrived with her polished speeches about family unity, Mary wanted to believe. She wanted to think, maybe this is the sister who will finally understand me. Maybe this is the woman who will help lift me out of my isolation. But instead, Robin became the wedge, the silent rival who drained Cody's time, affection, and loyalty, until Mary felt invisible. And when Mary tried to confront that reality, she was dismissed, told she was imagining things, told she was bitter, told she was the reason for the tension. And the cruelest part is that she started to believe it. And so, she clung to scraps of hope. Every smile, every rare kind word, every tiny gesture of affection from Cody became a lifeline. She convinced herself that maybe if she stayed quiet, if she endured a little longer, he would come back around, but instead, he withdrew further and further, until all that remained was a hollow shell of a marriage that existed only in name. And even then, Mary stayed, because the fear of leaving was greater than the pain of staying, because she had been told for decades that leaving meant destruction of the soul and eternal separation from God, and that fear kept her frozen. And this is why her story hits so hard, because it exposes the brutality of indoctrination, not with violence, not with chains, but with words, with ideas, with manipulation so subtle you do not even realize it is happening, until one day you wake up and realize you are not living, you are merely surviving. And Mary described how she would look in the mirror and not even recognize the woman. Staring back at her, she had lost herself. She had lost her voice. She had lost the simple ability to say, "I deserve more." And that loss is the very thing the audience witnessed season after season without even realizing it. We saw her diminish, saw her shrink, we saw her disappear before our eyes, and we did not have the full context to understand what we were really watching. And now that she has given us that context, it is impossible to unsee. And here lies the suspense, because the truth does not just rewrite Mary's story, it rewrites the entire narrative of the family. It forces us to question what we saw, what we believed, what we excused in the name of love and faith. And when that curtain falls, the picture is far darker than the glossy reality TV framing ever allowed us to see. And the question becomes not only how did Mary survive, but how many others are still trapped? How many others are still silenced? How many are still being told every day that their pain is their fault? And that is the haunting part of her confession. It does not end with her. It echoes outward into countless homes, into countless lives, and forces us to confront the systems that thrive on silence and submission. And it leaves us breathless. Because even though Mary is out, even though she is speaking, the chains of her past are not so easily broken, and we sit with that tension wondering if she will ever fully escape, if she will ever find love untainted by control, if she will ever forgive herself for the years she lost. And in that uncertainty lies the raw power of her story, because it is not neatly resolved. It is not a fairy tale ending. It is a battle still being fought in her heart, and that is why her words grip us, because they remind us that freedom is not just about leaving a place. It is about reclaiming the self that was stolen piece by piece. And whether Mary can ever truly do that remains the question that lingers heavy in the air as we await the final chapter of her revelation. Mary's story is not just the unraveling of one woman's journey, but the revelation of how systems built on control, fear, and silence can steal decades from a life. And what makes her story unforgettable is not the pain alone, but the courage to finally speak after so many years of being told to sit down, be quiet, and accept her fate. She has chosen to break that cycle, and in doing so, she forces the world to see what lies beneath the surface of carefully curated images and television illusions. Her truth is messy. It is uncomfortable. It challenges the narratives that were sold to us about love, family, and faith. Yet it is in that raw discomfort that the power of her story truly lies, because it makes us confront the ways in which silence protects abusers and how denial keeps victims trapped. Mary shows us that survival is not the same as living, that endurance is not the same as freedom, and that obedience is not the same as love. Her willingness to stand in her truth even now, even when it exposes her past mistakes, is an act of radical defiance against the very system that once defined her. And that act is what gives others hope, because every word she speaks is not just about her. It is about every woman who has ever been silenced, every soul who has ever been told they are less, every dream that has ever been buried under the weight of control. Mary reminds us that no matter how long the silence lasts, the truth still has the power to break through, and the act of speaking even after decades of suppression is itself the first breath of freedom.